Safety short series. Today we'll be posting 24th video of the series, and today's topic is very interesting, and that is on job safety or hazard analysis. The first step in preparing to conduct a JSA or JHA is to review all the jobs in the workplace and make a list of those jobs that might require JSA or JHA. Now, how to do that or achieve that? Simple, by involvement of employee or stakeholders. Get together with your employees and talk about the actual and potential hazards and unsafe behavior they might, believe might exist in their current working or surroundings. Now discuss the possible accidents that might result from the hazards and behaviors. Now, now let's come up with the idea to eliminate or control those hazard or behaviors. By the way, if you eliminate or reduce hazard, doesn't wait until the JSA or JHA to be conducted. Eliminate or reduce the hazard as soon as possible. So this should be your primary focus. No, we should not wait. Okay, some document is to be established. No, it is to be eliminated. Now, how to do it? Let us quickly see, and today we'll be explaining in steps how to do it. So, what do we see? Yes, what we can see is the basic layout or a form that we normally use to conduct a simple JSA or JHA. You will see great variety of JSA and JHA form used by various companies. As you can see below, JSA and JHA format include what? Job description, 3 basic column, job steps, hazard and risk, possible injuries, and preventive measures and precautions. Now be sure that you have enough information to describe each job action without it being overburdened with the details. It should be very simple. Don't combine steps. Get inputs from other workers doing the same job, review the steps, and all to make sure that you have not left something out, right? Now what we do is with the include workers. Now when you include workers in the process of performing the task, you can discuss, okay, did we forget anything? So they will also give you some inputs, right? And finally, consider taking photographs and even some videos of the task so that it can be practically shown that why these steps are taken into consideration. Now, one more important aspect in this is that whenever you're conducting this, especially when this task is being performed, you must tell the workers that you are evaluating the task, not the worker's performance. Because sometimes when you're observing, it is like, oh, he's trying to look into us. No, but you have to always tell them that we are looking into the task, not your performance. Correct? Now, steps to follow comes when we identify the hazard and behavior. Now, during job review process, focus on identifying hazardous conditions, that is unsafe conditions, and unsafe behavior or acts. Remember, it takes a hazard and exposure to the hazard before an accident can occur. So, it makes sense to look for them during the review. Now, source to help identify hazardous condition or unsafe condition and unsafe behaviors or acts include safety data sheets, safety committee reports, meeting report, maintenance report, safety inspection and accident investigation report, or existing work procedures. Now you might think that why to look here and there? Well, each information collected has its specific use. Like safety data sheets will give you, of material, which will give you information on what material are being used in process, so how to handle them safely. A safety committee report, there has been discussion on a similar job or an incident that has happened, what actions were taken. If we have repeated task based incident happening, maintenance reports will give you, how often this work has been done. Safety inspection and accident investigation will tell you how many times what type of incidents have have happened or affected in same area or same task. And finally, existing work procedures review will tell you information on what this task is required to be, when this task is required to be performed. Now we have complete information of any job that is to be performed. Looking into hazards, we will get information as what unsafe condition exists. Say, if hazards that pose an imminent danger to an employee's life or health exist, take immediate action to protect the worker. Any problem that can be corrected easily should be corrected as soon as possible. Once the condition is identified, to move towards behavior, we move towards behavior and act. So some jobs may require potentially high risk behavior that should be identified as in a JSA or JHA. Now high risk behavior that might increase the probability and severity of the injury or illness. Now these can include like lifting, lowering, pushing, pulling, or even manual handling operation, use of overhead cranes, man lift, or other heavy equipments, working on or near energized equipment or components, operating vehicles like trucks, forklift, etc. Now working within a confined space or under temperature extreme conditions. Now that we have identified that the task, let's conduct. Now these are the tasks that we perform. Now that we have identified the task, let's conduct a risk analysis. For the said task, it's important to prioritize each job. To do this analysis, each job to determine the degree of risk. To determine the degree of risk objectively, that is important to know what risk is. So let's discuss the concept of risk is equal to probability multiplied by severity multiplied by exposure. Here we are just trying to simplify it, correct? So here each job we have to analyze has inherent risk overall. The function of the three variable is probability, severity and exposure. The greater the probability, severity and exposure, higher the risk, correct? Very simple. Now to understand each individually, let's first talk about probability. So what is probability? Probability basically describes the likelihood that the worker will be injured or become ill or if is exposed to an hazard. Commonly, probability can be described using words like unlikely, likely or very likely, correct? Now there is a probability that unlikely it can happen, likely it can happen, correct? So let's keep it simple. How? Let's keep it in only 3 words. Suppose we are taking 3 words. Unlikely means injuries for exposure has low probability, that is less than 50% chances are there. Correct? And second is likely, means injury for exposure has a moderate probability, that is 50-50% chances, correct? And very likely means injury or from exposure has a high probability greater than 50%. So let us keep it simple 3 number chart, that is less than 50%, 50-50 and greater than 50%. Correct? Now let's talk about severity. So severity is essential of how serious the injuries or illness will be as a result of accident. So here again, let us keep again 3 simple numbers. So 3 words: minor, serious or death. So what does the minor means? Minor means other than serious physical harm that does not prevent the employee from continuing the work in the same job. Here we are describing it as person will not be that much affected that he can't resume the job immediately or the same day. So when we are saying that it is minor, so that means he will come back in the same day or just a minor injury or a first aid injury or anything. So we are taking it as a minor injury. Now when we talk of serious injury, means physical harm that prevents the employee from continuing work in the same job, or if the worker is not able to resume the job the same day. Suppose he is not able to resume on the same day. Now that is serious. If If a person is absent for the entire day, more than one day, that means, okay, one job shift he was not available, so that means it is serious. Okay. And finally, death. Now fatality, now it is obvious, like, right? So now this does not require an explanation. So simple, either the injury severity will be minor, serious, or death. Right? So 3-number chart. And finally, let's talk about exposure. Now exposure is what? So exposure is a condition of being exposed to hazard such that employee is somehow affected by the hazard. Describing the hazard exposure is also simple. Let's divide it into two parts. So how we can divide it into two parts? Physical exposure, that means only one person or a small group of people will be exposed at arm's length. So exposure is limited to one area and physical hazard. And secondly, the environmental exposure. So either it will affect small people or a larger group. That is, environmental exposure occurs when the employee can suffer some kind of injury or illness as a result of hazardous environment. Distance does not matter. So this means either the exposure will be limited or it can be environmental. That means greater, that can affect a larger mass. Now you must think that how JSA and JSA and we have reached to risk analysis is related. How will you identify which job requires JSA or JHA? So if data is not available, simple risk analysis will also help identify the task faster. Now looking at how we did it makes the task identification easy. Once the identification is done, list down all the jobs that you are analyzing, estimate the probability and severity of each job. Next, place the job in the appropriate section of risk matrix. That is, one, you have entered all jobs. You can easily prioritize each job to determine, which job to analyze first. So how we'll prioritize? We'll prioritize worst first. So job with the highest injury or illness rate will be classified as high worst first. Then job with potential to cause injury and illness, even if there is no history of previous accident, should also be considered. Job in which one simple human error can lead to severe accidental injury should also be considered. Now job that are new to your operation or have undergone changes in process and procedures, and finally job that are complex enough to require written instructions. So these are the jobs that you'll require JSA or JHA. Now that we know which job is to be taken first, develop the step, that is the process and analysis, in the context of JSA and JHA, including breaking the whole job down into simple steps. The idea is to carefully describe action and hazards within each step. Finally, how to mitigate those hazards through preventive measures. Now understand this: in each step and procedure described what the worker does. So let's take a look at each of these two components: worker and what he does, or action, worker and action. You can name it like any actor and action, worker and action, and anything that suits you, correct? We'll take worker and action. So what is worker? Who is worker? The worker is a person accomplishing the action. The worker may perform or not perform a particular action in steps. Now what are actions? An action is something that is done by a worker. Now action may or may not be observable. Now action may describe an activity that is accomplished or not accomplished. If two or more employees are performing the job, identify the employee, the worker first and then the action. If only one employee is performing the job, there is no need to identify the worker, correct? So for us, first step was to carefully examine, identify the hazard or task performed by the worker, what worker does, and does it have a potential that could cause harm to worker or process or equipment. To do this, we make a simple checklist or questions to be answered for each step. What can go wrong? What are the consequences? How could the hazard arise? What are the other contributing factors? How likely is that hazard will occur? So once these questions are answered, job steps are listed. Now we move to the second column of hazard and risk, possible injuries. There, are known potential hazards. Now starting so what are the known potential hazards? You can list down. So first is chemical. Say it can be flammable, corrosive, reactive, right? So that can be explosive. This is about material. Now let's talk about machine. So machine can be explosive due to overpressure, can cause electric shock, short circuit, electrical fire, fire due to static. There can be loss of power. There can be ergonomic strain based on activity performed, ergonomic human errors by falling lifting procedures, excavation collapse, fall, slip trip, fire, heat, mechanical hazard. Can also contribute, noise. There can be radiation effect, that is ionizing, non-ionizing. You can be struck by the mass coming at you or falling over you. You can be struck against. There can be exposure to temperature, extreme high or low temperatures, toxic exposure of chemicals, vibration effect, visibility impact, and finally weather phenomena. So all these can be listed as some potential hazards and possible injuries that might occur, that a worker is performing in each step. So what you have to do, you have to write each steps. Now adjacent to the each step in second column, what you'll write, what are the possible potential injuries, how it can impact you. And finally, when we are defining preventive measures and precautions, our focus is to eliminate or mitigate the hazard, or to eliminate or mitigate the exposure to the hazards, which is known to all. You can use the hazard control strategies or hierarchy of controls. Once all the steps are known, hazard identified, it becomes easy to identify the mitigation plan also. So, hope we were able to give you as much information on the job safety analysis and job hazard analysis. Thank you everyone for your support. Like I said, Safety Shorts is a series focusing on small safety videos. Thank you for all your support. Keep liking and sharing, and do not forget to subscribe for our motivation. We'll keep on posting more such videos. Till then, be connected and stay safe.